Hello, everyone. We are continuing our study of the Old Testament book of the prophet Daniel. We are in the second half of chapter 3, verses 19 through 30. Now, yesterday, we started off by setting the stage for the conflict. Our three friends of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who had been renamed in chapter 1 to more traditional Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they've gotten crosswise with King Nebuchadnezzar. And as you might recall, Nebuchadnezzar had built a golden statue 90 feet tall and expected everybody to worship it. And it was a statue, of course, of him. They refused. He gave them a chance to redeem themselves by praying to it anyway. And they said no. And he said, the consequence is I'm going to throw you into the furnace. They said, you know what? That's fine. We have a God that will save us. And yesterday we ended with an amazingly powerful verse at verse 18 when they essentially said, listen, we believe that our God has the power to save us. But even if our God chooses not to save us, it doesn't mean that our God is not real and worthy of our praise. And we will still not serve or worship, I should say, worship your idols. And then they ended it by saying, your majesty. They acknowledge that they still work for the guy, but they're not going to be unfaithful to the God of Israel. And here's how Nebuchadnezzar responds to that at verse 19.
Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual.
Now, as you read on, Nebuchadnezzar will bring in some strongmen to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And you're going to notice something as you read here. It gives a description of what they're wearing. What they're wearing is traditional Babylonian garb. And it's a reminder to us that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego work for Nebuchadnezzar. And you might recall from the first chapter, these 3 guys, along with Daniel, are his best employees. They're the smartest people. They're the most important people in his court. And they have been faithful to him all along, or maybe the right way to say it is loyal employees. But this is the first time in which the king has demanded that they do something that put them in conflict with the God of Israel. And for them, this is a no-brainer. They stay faithful to God. And so Nebuchadnezzar has them thrown in by these strongmen. The furnace is so hot that the strongmen, the guards, actually are killed as a result of throwing them into the fire. And here's what happens next.
But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied.
Nebuchadnezzar realizes that there are 4 figures walking around inside the furnace. We have Shadrach, we have Meshach, we have an Abednego, and then we have this image that's an angel or perhaps God himself that is in there with the 3 of them to protect them. And so the king ends up summoning them out. You're going to read that they're not harmed in the slightest. He is blown away by what he is witnessing. And as a result, he says, oh my gosh, your God is the real deal. And nobody can speak against your God because we have seen how powerful he is. Nebuchadnezzar passes what ends up being a ridiculous decree, but you can read that and enjoy it. But what's important to us is how the chapter ends at verse 30.
Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon.
You see, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had stayed faithful to their principles and their character. And even though that put them in conflict with their employer, ultimately they were rewarded for it. And I think that's a lesson that we need to walk away with as well. In the world in which we live, we may find ourselves in conflict with the world as we choose to remain faithful to the teachings of Jesus Christ. And in the end, there's going to be a reward for that. It's not a reward that we're seeking. It's just the reality that if we stay faithful to God, people will look on that and realize that there's something about that they should admire. And I think that that's a part of our faith witness as we live as faithful followers of Jesus Christ, loving people around us, but living differently as we choose to be obedient to God's teachings, that although they may criticize us for it, eventually they'll come around and say, gosh, at the same time, I respect you and I want to learn more. And that's where we begin our witness to others as we share how God has changed our lives and why we would choose to be obedient to a God who loves us and has always loved us. And he loves others as well. And we get to share that love with them. So go out, be faithful to the one true God, and know that he's got your back. Have a great day, everyone. If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.